This practice is called Breathe Easy, and it will incorporate a few restorative yoga poses with a breathing practice. And we'll use one blanket today. So if you need to go grab a blanket, you can do that. And also, if you happen to have yoga blocks or some pillows, but just something, kind of the size of a yoga block, if you don't have those, just two of them, maybe a stack of books or, something like that. And so we'll get started. We're going to fold our blanket in a particular way. So I've folded my blanket in half once, and then I'm going to fold it in half again. And then I'll fold it in half one more time so it makes this small rectangular shape. Then I'm going to roll it up from the long end, so you have kind of like a medium thickness blanket roll. And you can place that kind of in the center of your mat. And then I have some yoga blocks as well. You may or may not need these. It's going to be up to you once you get into the pose to kind of see how it feels. The blocks are going to be for our feet. You're going to lay down so that the kind of like right below the tips of the shoulder blades, kind of your mid-back, is resting on the blanket roll. If the height of the blanket roll feels like it's too much, and you sort of know because it feels like you're maybe efforting more than you need, then you can unroll this, unfold it one time, and then create just a slightly less thick roll like so. Actually, I'm just gonna keep mine that way for now. Right, so as I mentioned, blocks are there if you want them. You're gonna bring your mid back to the roll. And then if you want, you can place your feet on the blocks. And you might want to just arrange them so that your feet are about inner hips distance. You could also use a stack of pillows for your feet. But noticing, if there's a lot of engagement through the thighs, you might want to slide the blocks a little bit closer in. You don't want to use your abdominals here to keep yourself in the position. So if the blocks aren't working, you can also lower your feet down to the ground. Maybe even let the knees come together or extend your legs out along the floor. So my shoulders are on the ground, back of my head is on the floor, and then you can take your arms out into a T or even cactus arms here. And give yourself just a few moments to settle in. And becoming aware of all of the places that your body makes contact with the ground. So maybe your feet, your sacrum. You might notice your lower back gently arcing away from the floor. And then your mid-back is connected to the blanket roll. The tops of the shoulders and the head connected to the floor as well. And then if you feel like you're settled in that space, I'm going to be here for a little bit longer. And let your attention attune to your breath. Our breath is a form of understanding what we currently are experiencing in our bodies. So if the quality quality of your breath maybe feels a little shallow or hurried, that can give you kind of direct information about what your state of mind might be. And as soon as we bring our attention to our breath, it typically changes. Just through that act of observation, you might start to notice that your breath becomes more full in its capacity, maybe more fluid, starts to get a little bit more depth. You might even notice how the exhale becomes longer the more you stay in a place of stillness. And so when we attune to the breath, we automatically attune to the present moment. Notice where you feel the movement of your breath most prominently in your body. And that might be maybe through the ribs. There might be this expression of the breath moving away from the center of your body out to the periphery, so out to the ribs, out to the sides of your waist. And so part of the musculature that's engaged in our breath is the diaphragm, which is this dome-like muscle that connects to our rib cage. And so our yoga practice, or a practice such as this, can really allow the diaphragm to do what it's meant to do, which is to expand on the inhale, or you could think of it as contracting on the inhale, and then relaxing on the exhale. And so where you feel the contact of the blanket to that space of your mid-back, just maybe right at your lowest rib, maybe see if you can start to let your breath move into that space. And so we're not just breathing into the front body, but we're beginning to find a three-dimensional quality of our breath where we're intentionally breathing into the circumference of our ribs, so front and back and side to side. And let yourself be here for just a few more cycles of breath. And if you happen to have your feet still elevated on blocks or pillows or books even, you can bring your feet down to rest onto the floor. And then very gently, you're going to shift from lying on your back to coming onto your right side. And then you just want that blanket to be, again, connecting right at your lowest rib, but now this time we are on our side. And if it's okay for your neck and head, you can take your right arm overhead and let your head rest on your right bicep. Your knees can be bent, maybe even stacking the knees one on top of the other. And then to start, I want you to reach your left arm up overhead and stretch the left fingertips towards your right hand, or even slightly behind your right arm. And you'll really start to feel this left side of your ribs open. There's a little compression on the right. And then start to roll your chest open a little bit. I'm not going to come into a really deep twist, but you'll roll that left shoulder open and then let the upper body start to bow forward. You can maybe bring your left hand kind of in front of the right arm now. And you're rolling, right, using the blanket to create a little myofascial release here. So letting the blanket be responsible for proprioceptive awareness, right? You make the contact of your body to this prop as a way to feel that lowest part of your rib cage on your right side. And just gently rolling open and then slightly bowing forward. And then come back to a side bend. So shoulders are stacked one over the other. You can keep your left arm overhead if you'd like, or bring your left arm to rest in front of you. And take a few moments here. If you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. And see if you can come back to the breath moving three-dimensionally. So not just into the front body, not just into the side body, but the back body is included as well. And as you inhale, the diaphragm contracts and moves down. And as you exhale, the diaphragm softens and draws up. And then let your left hand come down to the floor. You can roll your heart slightly forward, maybe separate your legs, and then carefully press yourself up to a seat. And before we come on to the left side, give yourself a moment and just notice what you feel, comparing the bodily sensation of what you feel from your right side to your left side. So maybe something's quite obvious, maybe you feel no difference whatsoever. Great. And then we'll switch sides. So if you want, you can just turn to your left side, but I'm going to face the camera here. I'm going to move my blanket to the other side. So then again, yeah, bringing that space like right at your lowest rib on the left side can make contact with the blanket. And then left arm can reach up overhead, knees stack one on top of the other. And then we'll start with the right arm up overhead. You can have your right fingertips maybe behind your left arm. And then gently roll your chest open. You don't have to come very far. And then roll your chest towards the floor. You can use your right arm as a little kickstand or letting it open you up into the twist. Do that a few times. Feel the ribs kind of moving as one unit, the right arm opening, shoulders opening, chest opening. And bowing forward. Good. And then you can let the right shoulder stack on top of the left. Maybe keep your right arm overhead, or you can let your right hand rest either on the blanket or on the floor, maybe even by your right side. And let yourself receive now, right, that feeling of the blanket in the left side of your ribs, or just below the ribs. And then let your heart bow a little bit more towards the floor. The right hand can come down to the ground to support you. Separate the knees and press yourself upright. Good. So we're going to use the blanket for one more pose here. And I'm going to actually have you, if you had it in that first kind of thick blanket roll, I'm going to have you take it so that it's a little bit thinner, like the second option that I showed you at the very beginning. That'll be easier to do what we're going to do. And you're going to kind of make like a horseshoe with your blanket. Let's see. You're just kind of curling it around on your mat. Before we come down to our bellies, I'm going to have you just come to tabletop for a second. Hands underneath your shoulders and then knees in line with your hips. And see if you can really allow the belly and the front of your ribs to hang towards the floor. So trying not to contract the abdomen, but really let it be soft without trying to extend your spine. So keeping your spine neutral and just letting the front ribs release. And again, that's really subtle, so if you're not quite sure how to feel that, it's okay. Good. And then as you lower down, you're going to use this to support the front of your chest and kind of like around the outer arms. And then you can stack your hands one on top of the other, and then your forehead can come down to the floor, or to your stacked hands rather. Now if you find that there isn't quite enough space for your head to come to the ground, you could also grab your block or a pillow and rest your head on the block. So wherever you are, just let yourself land for a moment. So we were exploring the breath as it moves into the front body in that very first pose. And then we explored the breath moving into the side bodies, the sides of your ribs. And now here, which is definitely the hardest place to feel your breath, is you want to try to send the breath into the back body, so the back ribs. And so coming back to that reference of the diaphragm as this dome-like shaped muscle. Right? See if you can start to feel as you inhale this contraction. And as it contracts, it also moves down. And then as you exhale, the diaphragm softens and it moves up. So as you inhale, it contracts and moves down. And then as you exhale, it softens and rises up. So you could think of it as like a jellyfish, right? Kind of that movement, that pulsation. Kind of floating inside of your body and responding to your breath. Good. And then slowly begin to find your way upright to a seat. And if you want to sit in a simple cross-legged position, that's fine. And as you come up to your seat, you can close your eyes if you'd like, but just see how you feel. You've given all of this attention to becoming aware of your breath, developing that proprioceptive awareness for yourself. And to breathe intentionally, notice if it's impacted you in any way. And if you find that at any time during your day you need to come home to your body in some way, the breath is such a brilliant tool to have, and even to use that imagery of a jellyfish kind of floating down as you inhale and then rising up as you exhale. And you can even use your hand to kind of mimic that movement. Even just 3 cycles of breath can sometimes make a huge difference. And thank you for your presence.